Recently, I got into a short conversation with Jakeman160 Productions about whether Scootaloo would one day be able to fly on her own. He had heard many other people talk about Scootaloo having a disability that is keeping her from flying, and he believes that despite having small wings, Scootaloo should still have the capability of flying. And there are some bits of evidence in the show to support this. For example, in Hurricane Fluttershy we see a very large Pegasus that looks as though he's been using steroids for much of his life. But even though he is overly large for a Pegasus, we see that he has some very tiny wings, about the size of Scootaloo's wings. But we see later on in that same episode that he is able to keep up with a lot of the other Pegasi flying around when making the tornado. And this same Pegasus makes another appearance in the next season. The fact that he was accepted into the Wonderbolt Academy certainly should count for something, considering the kind of cadets they are looking for. Despite the fact that his wings are smaller than the average Pegasi, he can still keep up in flying with them. We also have an example in Baby Cakes, when we can see Pound Cake is able to fly around with ease. Despite being so young and so tiny, his wings had enough power to lift Pinkie Pie off the ground and drag her all over the house. So even in the case of a young Pegasus, it is possible to fly with a lot of weight dragging you down, even with tiny wings. In Scootaloo's case, however, we have seen a number of examples where she is having trouble maintaining herself in the air. So even though it seems like she should be capable of flying even with her small wings, there must be something else going on here to keep her from flying. Whether this will change at any point in the future, I really don't know. But maybe we shouldn't be asking about whether Scootaloo could be able to fly someday. Perhaps the better question would be, should Scootaloo be able to fly someday? I actually spoke about this topic very briefly in my Season 4 Storyboard Thoughts video, and I believe that Scootaloo's story could be going one of two ways. Either she gets a lot of help from Rainbow Dash and is able to overcome this great struggle, finally being able to fly on her own. And such a story would create a closer bond between them, showing another life lesson about what you can accomplish when you set your mind to it. Or there could even be some lessons from Fluttershy, as she has had to struggle with being a weak flyer for all of her life. Her experiences could help a lot with Scootaloo as well, and perhaps create an interesting friendship between them. However, there is another possibility that I personally believe would be a far stronger story that would also come with a very potent life lesson, albeit a little harsh. If Scootaloo had to deal with the fact that she may never be able to fly at all, that would be a very difficult prospect for her. She idolizes Rainbow Dash, wanting to be just like her. And Rainbow has shown her willingness to connect with Scootaloo and help her overcome challenges. But if the writers came up with a story that talked about how there may be some things in life that you can never overcome, like in this case a physical handicap, I would be thoroughly impressed. So many other stories tend to go the route of overcoming your weaknesses with great effort, which isn't a bad lesson and something that I think everyone should learn. However, we've seen it so many times before, and thus I think a far stronger story would come from Scootaloo adjusting to the fact that she may never be able to live up to her idol's expectations. I could see the writers going either way with Scootaloo's character, and I wouldn't be upset with them if they did decide to go for a story where Scootaloo is finally able to fly on her own. But personally, I think the much stronger story with the far greater emotional impact would come from Scootaloo being unable to fly on her own. I believe the writers could come up with a very mature and very heartfelt story here, and I think it would be such a wasted opportunity if they didn't go that route. However, just because I think that this could make for a very good story element does not necessarily mean that this sort of thing should happen to Scootaloo's character. We also have to think about what having a handicap would do for her in future stories as well, as that would change a great deal about what direction her character would go. So, is there more potential for Scootaloo if she does learn to fly and works her way up to becoming more like her idol Rainbow Dash? Or does her story leave more of a lasting impression if Scootaloo and everyone around her had to deal with the heartache and learning that would come from dealing with her handicap? I'm honestly not sure. There is a great deal of potential for both of these kinds of story arcs. So what do you think? Do you believe that Scootaloo will be capable of flying someday? Will she achieve her dream of flying alongside Rainbow Dash and getting ever higher along the way? Or do you believe that Scootaloo may one day discover that her wings will be unable to get her into the sky? I would like to hear your thoughts about Scootaloo and her potential, and let us hope to see some more in-depth stories from MLP in the future. I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.